Welcome to the Total Soccer Show and our latest batch of listener questions. On this episode, we're assessing Big Ange's suitability for MLS. We're asking if Xabi Alonso is the answer for Real Madrid. And we're completely changing the shape of the soccer field. My name's Ryan Bailey. Joining me today, it's your friend, it's my friend, it's listener question answerer extraordinaire, Taylor Rockwell. Hello, Taylor.
Hello, Ryan Bailey. Credit to you and to our listeners for these questions, because they are all excellent, and they were all in different ways head-scratchers for me as I tried to answer them all.
There we go. Well, we'll get there, Taylor, and we will answer them all. Don't give me any credit, baby. It's all the listeners. It's all them. No?
Curated, my friend. A curated list of listener questions, and I know who did the curation.
Oh, too kind.
It's that guy wearing those fancy glasses. Not that other guy wearing those fancy glasses.
Hey, it's the other guy wearing his fancy glasses. It's Joe Lowery. Hi, Joe.
Hey, other guy with fancy glasses. To me, you were the other guy, but I guess to you, I'm the other guy. It's very
relative.
confusing. Yeah, it is. These are great questions, though. And now that I know they've been curated, I feel so much fancier, and I feel so much better positioned to answer these questions from my glass tower.
I like the word curated. It feels like I'm running a museum, Joe.
Yes. Here's a question about goals and other soccer things. Look over here.
Very good. Graham Ruthven, how are you, sir?
I'm very well. Ryan, I actually have glasses. Should I go and put mine on just to make Taylor feel?
Yes, you
I'm
should.
supposed to wear glasses, but I don't.
Are you for screens, for driving?
Yeah, for screens. Apparently, looking at screens has destroyed my retinas, so I'm meant to wear glasses, but I like the pain.
If you watch 17 screens at once, as is your wont during soccer days, does that destroy your eyes at a greater ratio?
Yeah, 4 eyes in that situation are actually really handy, so maybe I should start wearing my glasses to watch 17 screens.
I don't think we talk enough about how Graham's habits put a strain on his career expectancy. You know, like professional athletes, you get past 35, and depending on the sport, even younger than that, it might be time to find something new. Graham, I'm worried about you. The strain you're putting on your body, I'm concerned that you're not going to make it to 2030 with this job.
4,000 minutes per season on my eyes for the last 15 years. That's a lot.
Yet you remain DB spectacled. You're the consummate professional who goes out there every day and battles. Well
Wayne Rooney could never. He was done at 30. I'm still going.
There you go. I think actually Graham's going to do the reverse soccer player career. So he's going to start off doing analysis and punditry for a couple of decades, and then he's going to switch to being an elite level player. He's just going to do it backwards.
Okay.
He is getting suspiciously fitter. I think there might be some truth here, Ryan.
Yeah, he's getting so fit he doesn't even need glasses
Foiled.
anymore.
Potch is going to say that you're no eye dominant, not left eye dominant, not right eye dominant. You just have no eye dominance left. That might be an obstacle for you at the highest levels, but I believe in you, Graham.
All right, there we go. Questions will be answered by our very own Benjamin Button and the rest of us as well. But before we get there, patreon.com/Total Soccer Show is where you'll find our bonus content, including bonus listener questions. We've got one coming to the feed today about US being better off if it had banned playing soccer with walls instead of no walls. Talk about walls, Graham, on the bonus feed. Coming your way on patreon.com/Total Soccer Show. Also, bonus video and access to our Discord server where all the cool kids are hanging out. Please and a thank you. But for now, let's get to our listener questions mailbag. Mark Bajaski comes up first with a question submitted via our Discord. With it appearing that Big Ange is going to be leaving Spurs at the end of the season, how would he do in Major League Soccer? Would Ange ball translate well to a league where number 10s are still viable and defending is somewhat optional? I tend to think he'd be very successful, and given his globe-trotting style, could definitely see him in MLS someday. Our Big Ange correspondent Graham Ruthven is here to answer this one first. It does feel in many ways, with the evidence that Mark's laid out there, Graham, as a good fit. I feel like Big Ange will do several continents before he retires in terms of where he manages, and why not MLS?
Yeah, I mean, he's already bagged, 3 continents if you're taking Australia as Oceania and not Asia, which is not the way it is in football. But yeah, he's coached in Japan, he's been the Australian national team manager, Celtic in the Premier League, so I wouldn't rule out him wanting to tick off MLS. I've kind of got conflicting thoughts on this, because Mark is right. MLS is a league where defending is optional, so maybe there wouldn't be the same scrutiny on an Ange team. But I think it could.
Graham, we defend with our lives.
Hey, Charlotte are actually one of the exceptions to that. They're a pretty good defensive unit.
4 goals in Columbus?
Well, apart from that, if we ignore that game,
Gotcha.
Joe. We didn't ignore that game on the weekend review. We talked about it at length, just to pain Ryan. But I think it could be quite difficult for Ange in MLS because of the way that the league is set up without any single dominant team. Or the one dominant team that there is a team that would not be able to play Ange ball. I'm talking about Inter Miami. But when we have seen the ultimate manifestation of Ange ball, which I think of as basically that was at Celtic, right? That was the ultimate Ange ball manifestation. He had the talent relative to the rest of the competition to be utterly relentless and make the approach work without much compromise, right? And I've spoken about this with Spurs this season. This is not so much the case now because they are not playing like an Ange Postecoglou team, but early in the season when there was still that identity there, I've said the way that Spurs play, the way that they set up is as if they're the best team in the league, like as if they have the talent to make up for some of the compromises of the approach, if that makes any sense, or the flaws of the approach. So I think at MLS that would be really difficult because those teams don't really exist. And if you look at his time in Japan, I wrote a piece about Yokohama F. Marinos for the newsletter like last season and what they did under Ange Postecoglou. They won the title in his final season and he established an identity that Marinos still carry forward to this day, and they've tried to hire managers who have either worked under Ange Postecoglou like Kevin Muscat or are similar in terms of their approach. In his first season at Marinos, they almost got relegated. So even in that job, there was the rough and the smooth of Ange ball. I guess the good news for Ange in MLS would be that for now, anyway, there's no relegation. He could never take a USL Division 1 job for that reason. But I think it would be fun to see him build on Nancy ball at Columbus whenever he moves on. I'd be putting, not even joking, I'd be putting Postecoglou on a short list if I'm LAFC plotting what to do after Steve Cherundolo leaves. I mean, if the reason LAFC fans are open to that happening is because of his sort of stodgy style of play, then Big Ange is the antidote to that. So, I'd at least give him a call because it does seem likely that no matter what happens in the Europa League, whether they win that or not, it does seem likely he's going to be on the market this summer.
Graham, you've gone exactly where I wanted you to go with that, because the top line of my notes for this question from Mark is ask Graham about how Big Ange has done with teams that don't have a talent advantage. Tottenham has not gone well, didn't overachieve with Celtic, really. I mean, that team was very, very good, but they did what they were expected to do when it comes to results totally. and to points. And then the last line I had on under that little outline there is he did help Yokohama F. Marinos win their first league title in 15 years, but there's also the other stuff that you mentioned there. So I don't know is ultimately my answer to this question. I think there would be real pluses, and I do think that Ange is, having coached in so many different environments, he has had more experiences at higher levels than any coach that has ever been in Major League Soccer would have had. Like, his resume would be at a higher level than MLS has ever seen. And I do think that gives him an edge when it comes to communicating with players. At the same time, we don't see a coach of a team that is able to single-handedly lift a team to new heights, because that's not how soccer works. So, yeah, if he's coaching a team with really, really talented players like Columbus or LAFC, I could see that working. If he's not coaching one of those teams and is on a team with bottom half of the league talent, I don't know that we have enough evidence from Ange's career that says he's going to be able to bootstrap that team into something more. Do I want to see it, though? You bet I want to see it.
So Joe, in your opinion, what would be the ideal Big Ange MLS club?
I mean, Graham already got it. I think Columbus is where I was thinking about this as well, with Wilfried Nancy eventually moving on, because eventually he's going to move on. And they already do a ton of the, we're going to really tilt the field. And even before we do that and get into the attacking half, we're going to build out from the back with really detailed positioning. The positioning that Ange uses is different than what Nancy does, where Big Ange likes to push his fullbacks into midfield a lot of the time. And there's different shapes in some of their possession structures. But, I mean, these players have proven to be so positionally flexible under Nancy that I think you can really harness and iterate a lot of that with someone like Big Ange coming in. The big difference would be a theme of Ange Postecoglou is his high line defensively. Wilfried Nancy is not that kind of coach, where they do tend to defend more in a mid-block than they do pressing high and being super energetic and engaged in that way. Maybe it would work, maybe it wouldn't, but stylistically, I think Columbus is a really great job. But Graham's right with LAFC too, and this is more about LAFC than it is about Ange Postecoglou. These are the kinds of names that LAFC's like calling about and trying. I don't know. I have no idea if they've talked to Big Ange or not, obviously. But, I mean, LAFC have the sort of cachet in Major League Soccer to take a big swing, and they have the appetite to take a pretty big swing. I still think they should hire Jesper Sorensen, but that's neither here nor there. It's a great link to make, Graham, on Ange.
I thought it was Thomas Christensen.
I mean, that would be a great move too, but the U.S. need him, Taylor. So,
Joe, when Ronny Deila is pushed into falling on a sword by Atlanta, would Big Ange work at Atlanta?
Atlanta have other
Thanks,
problems. I don't know that Big Ange would fix Atlanta United. I think there'd be some other challenges there.
All right.
Be fun though.
So, Taylor, I think personally speaking, I would like Big Ange to come over here just because I want him to come as an away coach to Bank of America Stadium. I go to the presser, ask him a disappointing question, and get my very own. Oh mate, I want my own one.
Be honest. Would you enjoy that, or would you be sad that you made him sad? Because I think I would be sad that I made him sad, even if I was like, "Oh, he said the thing."
I don't think there's any question I could ask him that wouldn't make him say, "Oh, mate."
Just you're not his kind of guy. You're just anticipating that.
What's the recipe? You begin your question by stating what you saw as being factually correct, then implying you knew more, and then criticizing a player at the end. That's about it, right? So it's like, clearly you all weren't up to speed today. Obviously this player would have helped you better perform. Are you upset you didn't have him?
Yeah. Yeah, when you went 4-0 down in the 75th, I would have made a different substitute, Big Ange. What do you make of that?
Oh, so we're living in a fantasy land where Charlotte scored 4 goals?
Sure.
Okay.
I mean, we're in a fantasy land where Ryan is
holding Big
Ange.
Holding Big Ange's feet to the fire. Yeah.
It is. Apologies to get us away from Ryan disappointing Ange Postecoglou. It is an interesting question about what's next for Big Ange and sort of where he goes next. I'm really curious to see what happens because I enjoy watching his teams play soccer. They are not controlled in the way that many other top teams do try to control. They're on the scale of risk aversion to risk positive. They are risk positive, and I think it makes for really entertaining stuff, if not always for really successful stuff, as we've seen this season. I'm really interested to see what's next for him. It almost certainly will not be in Major League Soccer, but I'm eager to see how he performs and how his team performs wherever that is at a level that probably will not look like him coaching the dominant team in whatever league he's in. Like that is going to be a challenge for him regardless of where he goes because he's not getting one of those jobs after Tottenham.
Well, now I'm picturing the press conference and going, "Oh, mate, we're risk positive. Don't you understand that?"
It's like he's
great
in the
phrase
room with us.
I love it. Mark Bajuski, thank you very much indeed for your question. Let's go to Richard Rolson, who asks this one. Would more people watch the Bundesliga in the United States if its broadcast deal was with NBC? Very interesting question, Taylor, and we're not here to disparage any particular TV network, but I'm inclined to kind of say yes to this one. Graham, have you got a question?
Yeah, can I just can I ask for some context? Because obviously I'm a bit of an outsider here. Is the idea here that NBC have done such a good job with its Premier League coverage?
Allow me to provide context without further interruption from Graham Ruthven. How's that?
Okay, go on.
So, I'm inclined to say yes because I think the biggest success, Graham, essentially, that NBC have is their studio product. I think it's 2013, if I'm not mistaken, when they took over the Premier League coverage. And the Premier League has grown in popularity to a large degree. You can attribute that success to NBC. The way they've done their coverage is really, really good, in my opinion. And the way they've put it, on big NBC quite a lot. The way they dedicate that many hours and a lot of really good punditry to the coverage, I think helps. I think ESPN and ESPN FC, they do a great job and they show a lot of games, but they don't quite have that. They haven't quite broken through in the way that NBC
audience?
has.
Like between NBC and ESPN, because ESPN obviously worldwide leader in sports and all that. Do NBC have the same natural sort of audience?
I think they've got a bigger scope because they have the broadcast network channel of NBC, which they show games on as well. I think that opens them up to more new viewerships, arguably. I could be wrong. This could be my personal interpretation. But I think, Taylor, would you agree that I think I'm inclined to say yes to Richard's question because of the success that NBC have had with the Premier League. Obviously, it's an intrinsically different product to the Bundesliga. I called the Liga product. That's gross. I apologize for that. But I feel like they have just got the recipe nailed. And not that ESPN don't have the recipe nailed, but NBC, I think the way they've approached the Premier League has been really positive for soccer in this country. And I'm inclined to believe they could do a good job with other leagues.
Is it also that NBC, from a sporting perspective, has, I think, more of a prestige about them, more so than hype and trying to get clicks. I feel like it's like the network of the Olympics and, I don't know, tennis and golf. Maybe that's more CBS. But I think there is a perception that there is like more of an intellectual approach to the way they are discussing soccer, that their halftime analysis is analysis, their post-game analysis is analysis. You're not usually getting hot takes. And I feel like that lends itself to more of a, like, I'm watching the game to enjoy it, but then also to understand it more via their coverage. And I think the consistency in that coverage, both in terms of the quality they're putting out, it starts with Kyle Martino, and I think Tim Howard has filled in pretty well when Martino departed. But you've had the two Robbies, you've had Rebecca Lowe. I think the consistency in terms of personnel helps. I also think the consistency in terms of knowing where it is helps. And I think they were a little bit disrupted when they had NBC Sports Gold and then NBC Sports Gold Pro, Premier, Plus, whatever it was. And you still have a little bit of that. But by contrast, the Bundesliga has jumped from Fox to ESPN. And some games are on ESPN, and some games are on ESPN Plus. And as a person who doesn't have cable, I wonder if maybe that hurts them a little bit being on ESPN, because you don't get that same level of coverage in a broader way as you do with, say, certain games being on NBC and the like. Yeah. So I think there is that. There's also the fact that the Premier League, I think, aggressively courted the American marketplace in the 90s and early 2000s, and I think that helped kind of cement them further, because there's also the kind of language connection, the shared history as well. So I think all of those factor in. And then I think the things that harm the Bundesliga, should I pause there before I just go into a full-on monologue and let other people talk? I'll do that, and then I'll share why I think the Bundesliga also maybe struggles to gain traction.
I was happy to let Taylor cook there.
Oh, no, please continue cooking, Taylor. But I will jump in and say that many a year ago, I wrote a feature for The Athletic, back when they used to let me write things, about NBC's Premier League coverage. And I spoke to a couple of the producers there, and they sort of highlighted something that stuck with me. And that's the way they target their analysis and the way they produce things to not just appeal to hardcore fans, but also beginner fans, people who are coming to the sport as well. And I think they do a really good job of finding that balance between not insulting the people who know a lot about the game and introducing new fans as well. It's really difficult, but they somehow manage to do that.
I think of like one specific thing that, to your point, like Robbie Earle is really good at making a I am thinking sound effect where like Rebecca Lowe will say to him like, just not good enough on the day, and he'll have a like, no, it wasn't. But here, and like, there's never that sort of like, no, it was terrible. Like, you're not getting that performative screaming. You're getting this sort of contemplative, no, it probably wasn't good enough, but here's why it wasn't good enough. And sort of, I think he's always coming at it from the perspective of a former player who himself was criticized, and so doesn't want to kind of rake a player over the coals the way maybe some studio analysts at ESPN might, without naming specific names, but Joe knows who I'm talking about. And I think then there is still, though, an honesty in that approach. There is still analysis and some criticism, but it just feels less hot-takey and more considered. And I think, at least for me, that appeals. And I think for people who want to understand the game more or get some level of understanding, I think that probably helps. I think the other issues I see for the Bundesliga, I think there's a few. I think, number one, the perception that it is completely dominated by Bayern Munich, I think immediately makes people less inclined, because you've just got one team that you expect to win it every single time. I think it's kind of the same thing with the French league. I think it doesn't feel immediately competitive, and for Americans who want to jump into something, you want to jump into a team. You don't want to go with maybe like you don't want to be a glory hunter or something like that, or you don't want that accusation. So you're not going to jump in with Bayern, but at the same time, you're then jumping into like maybe Dortmund, but they're really inconsistent. Maybe it's Leipzig, but they're inconsistent. Like it's tougher to find a team that like doesn't feel like lightning in a bottle will be required to win a title, with certain exceptions lately. I also think 50+1 means that you're going to get lower spending and more kind of caution in the transfer window, so you don't have every single high-profile player moving to the Bundesliga, and we've talked about it before. The 17th club in the Premier League with their TV revenue and their bonus money can spend more than like the 6th best team in the Bundesliga, and maybe even more so, because I think there's a sizable gap in the finances. So you're getting more money in the Premier League, you're getting bigger names, you're getting that kind of like hype around it. And I think the loss of certain clubs in the Bundesliga has further hurt them, specifically Schalke. Schalke is the one that in considering this question, and maybe spending too long considering it, that felt like the other team that you could jump in and kind of support, and they had the mining, the working class background. They were like occasionally going to make a run of the Champions League. They were occasionally going to find a next level talent like Manuel Neuer, and then they were occasionally going to challenge for the title and sometimes win it. And that hasn't been the case for a good long while. But I think Schalke were another team that kind of you could add into the top 4, top 6 conversation in the Bundesliga and created some excitement. And I think the loss of Schalke and other teams who are kind of performing at that level, I think hurts the perception as well and just makes it it's a greater barrier to entry, basically.
Yeah, I think I am right there with you on basically all of that stuff, Taylor. The thing with the Bundesliga, and there's a couple of things here, I don't know how much more room there is in the soccer viewing schedules for people in the United States in 2025, right? Liga MX in the Premier League carve out a bunch of that. There's a core dedicated segment of people that are going to games, local games on Saturdays, and especially on Saturdays, I suppose, and who are watching those products as well, not in the same numbers that they're watching Liga MX and the Premier League and the Champions League. But there's a lot of competition for soccer. And if you're not going to be the league that can legitimately claim to have the highest quality product, which is the Premier League, and I don't think any other league can really make a claim to that. If you're not that, I think it's going to be really hard to climb into the driver's seat or to gain a noticeably larger share of the soccer pie in the United States. The other thing, we've given NBC credit, and I think they have done a really good job elevating the Premier League. Even though I'll admit I haven't paid as close of attention to their coverage. I don't watch the studio coverage. I'm not as up to date on all of that as you guys are. The other component, though, to the Premier League's rise is obvious, and Taylor got to this too. They tripled their spending on transfers from 2012 to 2017, according to everybody's favorite football planetarium, CIES. They've spent at a rate that no other league in the world has spent, even as some of that has backed off a little bit when it comes to transfers in the last few seasons. I mean, it's a pretty nice break for NBC that their deal with the Premier League, coincided with them going nuclear and deciding to spend and really stake their claim as the dominant league in the world. That wasn't the case in 2013. Like it was a question 12 years ago. It's not a question anymore. And for the Bundesliga, the gap is so large that you can't make a legitimate claim to be the best in the world. And Americans want to watch the best in the world. I think there's a lot of that is true. And then you toss in the language barrier, which I think is a legitimate factor as well. And the fact that, as to why the Bundesliga isn't as popular now. I do think that the NBC has stewarded their soccer properties better than ESPN has, by and large. I think that matters, but I think that probably matters less. Or at least, I think the on-field stuff really does matter a lot in this equation.
Yeah, the Bundesliga deal with ESPN is worth $30 million a season. The Premier League's deal with NBC is worth $450 million a season. And they rejected, the last time these rights went out to tender, the Premier League rejected a more lucrative offer from Fox, I believe it was, because they believe the NBC packaging is worth so much to them as a brand in the US that they wanted to continue with that. So those numbers and the fact that the Premier League could have got even more kind of illustrates the difference between the two leagues. I do think we'll start to see the Bundesliga making some more bullish moves in the US because they're now on relevance books. That was a deal that was struck last September. The ESPN deal is also up at the end of next season. And for anyone who doesn't know, Relevant are like Ryan, how would you describe them? Like a media organisation, like a media rights organisation?
Yeah. They organise summer tours here and stuff like that.
Yeah, Stephen Ross's company, and they are super bullish on ideas like bringing competitive European games to the US. So they've had the La Liga rights for a while, which is why there's been a push to play Spanish games in Miami. The Hard Rock Stadium is obviously the Dolphin Stadium, which Stephen Ross owns. Relevant also won the Champions League rights in March. And guess what? There's also the idea that the Champions League final could be played in the US at some point. Of course, German football, very, very different culturally. I don't think they're ever going to propose playing competitive games in the US, but it wouldn't surprise me if we saw the TV rights move or them just start to do something a little bit more interesting with how they're packaging that league.
It's wild how much control they had, how much it felt like they were always going to be the broadcaster for soccer in the US, and how much that is no longer the case at this point. That is kind of nuts.
Don't it always seem to go, etc. and so on. Thank you very much, Richard Rolston, for your question. And let's take a quick break. When we come back, we're talking about which of the top 17 Premier League teams will be next to be relegated and much more. Join us then. Total Soccer Show, welcome back to our listener questions. David McCracken's here with a cracking question of his own. It is, of the current top 17 teams in the Premier League, who do you think is going to be relegated first, and when do you think it will happen? I think it will happen next season? No, actually, no, because we have to discuss whether one of the upcoming 3 teams, Graham, will be relegated before these teams. But I like the idea of a top 17 in the Premier League. That's a new one for me. But we're asking here...
The Big 17.
the Big 17, indeed. I suppose the question here is, which of the current established teams will go down next, and perhaps whether even we are casting doom on the upcoming teams for next season too.
Brentford would be my pick, which I don't take joy in saying.
No preamble.
So much...
Straight in.
No. I'm just giving you names. I don't want to get Brentford. They're lovable, but hey, I've been asked the question. I'm going to answer it. They would be my pick of the established top 17 teams. You're absolutely right, Ryan. Looking ahead to next season, it's entirely possible that we'll have Leeds and Burnley and whoever comes up from the playoffs going straight back down, such as the gap between the 2 leagues. So I can't really call when I think Brentford will get relegated, but I think at some point they will get relegated, just because that's what happens for a team of that size. They have been so successful at replacing players when they leave. They sold Ivan Toney, and then Johan Wissa and Brian Mbeumo step up and they're even better. And we saw last season what happened when they had a number of injuries to some key players and they got sucked into the fight near the bottom. And if there hadn't been a historically bad bottom 3, maybe they might have gone down last season. So it's testament to their model and their scouting that they have been able to, first of all, get up to the Premier League for the size of club that they are, and then stay there for so long while playing this exciting brand of football. But that model does rely on an element of luck to keep moving forward. They need to keep hitting on their signings, and they'll get unlucky one season. They could also lose Thomas Frank. He could be lured away by a bigger club, so that would also be a blow. And I look at a couple other of the smaller clubs in the league. Bournemouth, let's throw out Bournemouth. I could have said them because a lot of the same things apply to them. Manager could leave, hitting with a lot of their signings. But they have Bill Foley. They've got a billionaire owner. So if things did get sticky for them, I have more faith that they would be able to dig deep and spend more to get Bournemouth out of trouble. They spent €45 million on Evan Nielsen to replace Dominic Solanke. They're spending more and more. That'll continue if they get into Europe. Whereas Brentford, they've got a millionaire owner, but I think they're a purer product of their model than any other team in this league. And if that model falters at any point, they might suffer.
You mean next season if they don't score 12 goals inside the first minute?
That could be, yeah, that might happen.
It's going to be 12 goals in the last minute. That's next season's thing, Taylor.
That'd be more fun. This question, for me, made me then wonder, is this the strongest the Premier League has ever been?
Yeah.
Right? It has to be.
All the way through, you mean?
Yeah, because just I hear what you say about Brentford. I had a similar thought about Bournemouth, especially if they lose their manager. Historically, or at least recent history, would have Everton be on that list, but now they've got the new owners, they've got the new stadium. It feels like they are more clear of the hot water. Even West Ham with not David Moyes there, excuse me, but even West Ham with Graham Potter there, they're still just going to spend so much money. Maybe they could do the QPR thing of spending too much money and just kind of sinking into the muck, but I struggle to see any team that is the obvious one to point to, and I think that goes some way towards explaining why Spurs and Manchester United are where they are in the table. A lot of that is them prioritizing other competitions and being bad themselves, but the quality of the Premier League on the whole, I think, is so much greater than it has been at times in the past that it is those 17 teams, it is the Big 17, basically. I would throw Wolves into the conversation, though. They're on my list.
To the Wolves?
What's that?
You're throwing Wolves to the Wolves now?
Yes, I am. Exactly. You got it. Thank you. Yes. I'm throwing Wolves, the club, to larger Wolves, smaller Wolves, more ferocious Wolves. They're 13th, obviously, right now on the table. Worst goals against of any team outside the relegation zone. And I wonder what happens if they sell an attacker or two. Could they be in trouble? But they kind of consistently sell players and then buy more. They spend plenty of money themselves. And I don't think are in looming PSR situations. I'm not sure which clubs are at this point. Maybe all of them, maybe none of them. It's confusing to know for sure. But Wolves were the only other ones who jumped out as being a possibility for me.
Hey, Joe, want my prediction?
Please.
Burnley stay up because they grind it out. Leeds run close. They were replaced in the relegation zone by West Ham United. What do you think?
I think West Ham is a good shout. I think if there's going to be a team that stays up, it's probably going to be Leeds. But, West Ham are on my list. And I like that you're bold enough to say next season, Ryan. I'm a coward. I'm saying at least not till the season after next. But, you got to go out on that limb. It's comfy out there. Make yourself a little perch. Hang out there for a little bit. Yeah, West Ham and Wolves are my picks. They both have the worst expected goal differential this season outside of the relegation zone. I think Graham's Brentford pick is a fascinating one. I think I disagree, but I also take your point, Graham, where if you do whiff on a couple of players, you're in real trouble. And if you lose Thomas Frank, you're in real trouble. And I understand it's a similar sentiment with Areola and Bournemouth right now. I think those teams probably have more staying power. Like I would trust Brentford to spend money wisely, smaller amount of money wisely, more than I trust Wolves and West Ham to spend larger amounts of money wisely. So that's where I come down.
I agree with that, but there's like a point where if you're spending so much more money than another team, you're going to get like a better player, regardless of.
But we're still. I mean, I'm waiting for that point to happen. We're still waiting for that point to happen. I understand we're looking forward to the future here. It's difficult. Taylor, I think your observation about the league top to bottom being stronger than at any point in recent history seems true, and I think that has made it very difficult for teams that are going up and down to really establish themselves, because the top, it's absurd to say the top 17 teams are strong. But it would not surprise me whatsoever if we see a Wolves or a West Ham or maybe even one or two of the other teams that have been mentioned drop before too long. Or, maybe it's Tottenham's time, maybe it's Manchester United's time. What wonders will 2026 hold,
Here's to hoping.
I think you could make a compelling case for a few different clubs, but all of those cases are going to involve like multiple things going wrong, multiple safeguards failing, essentially, because it would require Brentford like losing a manager, and then like the replacement not being very good, but also they sell players and don't replace them well, and then also the tactics suffer. Like it would be a number of things. Whereas I think in seasons past we've had moments where it's like, oh, they're already doomed before this season is even over. And like one mistake will completely like destroy their entire season. This time around, I think it would be harder, because even somebody like Bournemouth, they've already proven they can make tough decisions with managers and bring in somebody who feels like is going to fit the bill better, and that's where we are now. So even if they lost their manager, it seems like they would be able to replace him and continue to play pretty productive football, and also Tyler Adams.
Important point to make at the end there. Thank you very much, David McCracken, for that question. Brian Scarborough has been in touch with this one. If Napoli wins the Scudetto, will Kvaratskhelia be a title winner in both Liga and Serie A? Are there rules in regards to this, and has this ever happened before? Taylor Rockwell, if my notes are correct, Kvaradona played 17 games for Napoli and has played a whole bunch for PSG as well this season. Do he get both medals?
He do. I do believe. And I think there are some leagues that have appearance requirements. I think some leagues have gotten away from that. I love this question. I told Graham there was one question that I spent way too much time on in my preparation. It was this one, because it is not nearly as rare of an occurrence as you might think for a player to win two leagues in the same season. Lots of players have won the league after leaving a team in January, like Oscar leaving Chelsea in 2017. There are other weird examples with leagues in different calendars. David Beckham in the Galaxy and PSG comes up a lot. Henrik Larsson during the Swedish winter break, coming in on loan to Manchester United winning the league. Yeah, right, and then going back. But in terms
that was so weird. Sorry, that was so weird in that he it was like a loan for March, right? Like it was like out of like out of window because it was the Swedish. That was so weird, and he was so good, and Ferguson wanted to keep him, and he was like, "Nah, I'm going back to Helsingborgs." Weird times.
Ryan, what was your question?
I was sorry to interrupt, but did Oscar go to China? No. Is that what happened?
He went to China, yes. Yeah. But he did not win the league there, and so he does not answer this. So you have those other ones where you have those as kind of like things that have occurred. But in terms of players that have won the league twice in the same season, there is a somewhat lengthy list. You have João Cancelo, got a lot of headlines very recently for doing it. He won the Bundesliga with Bayern Munich and the Premier League with Manchester City in the same season. Alvaro Odriozola, I think maybe had the best season of anybody I'm going to list. Played 5 games for Real Madrid, which I think qualified for him for a medal, or did qualify him for a medal in the 2019-2020 season. He is then loaned to Bayern in January. He wins the Bundesliga and the Champions League and the DFB Pokal too. So he does the treble and also wins a La Liga winners medal at the same time. On a similar note, I think Kingsley Coman did this as well. He is listed as having won the league with Juventus. Reporting I saw said he got a winner's medal, but he only played 1 game for Juve in the 2015-2016 season before moving to Bayern in late August, and then he wins the league with Bayern. So he is on the list as well. I have more, but I will let my illustrious co-hosts chime in before I list every single possible person on the list.
Is Daniel Amarte
He is
on there? He was on the online listicles that I ended up sourcing.
Which one of us wrote that, Graham?
Yes, it's one of the few that didn't have our byline on it.
Yeah, Copenhagen and Leicester, right, in the
That's
same
right,
season. Graham, you know who else is on there? A player who we talked about yesterday off air for Soccer 101, Lee Griffiths. That's
Oh,
a
wow.
surprise one,
Yeah.
right? 2013-2014 season, he first half, he's the leading scorer for Wolves in League One in the 3rd division of England. Time has made a difference for Wolves. And then he moves to Celtic in January, wins the league with them.
Yeah. Very good. Joe, any further nominees?
No, not for me. I'm just wondering how we can raise the stakes here a little bit, and I have a theory on all of this.
The
We
Will
talked about
Zaha paradox?
2 trophies in one. Let's do 3 trophies in a single season for 3 different clubs. With the Club World Cup this summer, there's a transfer window that's opening up from June 1 to June 10. Somebody moves to a team in the Club World Cup, wins the Club World Cup, moves in the summer transfer window, the real one, goes and moves to a team that ends up winning the title, then moves in January to a team in a different league that ends up winning that title. Boom, 3 trophies in one, history made, solved it. Thank you very much.
And because Club World Cup is technically this season, that would be possible. Because obviously you're restricted from like 3-1 by FIFA, but Club World Cup is technically last season, which is why the transfer window has been split, as you mentioned, Joe. So it's possible. Could happen.
Yeah, obviously you are restricted to less than 3 teams in one season. We all knew that. It was very obvious. And I'm glad that my solution gets around that problem that I did, in fact, know about previously.
Very good. Due diligence completed.
Nailed it.
Stuff. Yeah.
I'm sad.
Yes, Brasilism, really. That's what it was.
I wish Zaha had made an appearance or a couple for Galatasaray this season, because he could have been in the conversation. Although Lyon obviously not winning the French league, but he's an example of that, right? Where if he had played for Galatasaray and then moved to Lyon and Galatasaray win the league, and then Lyon happened to spring a surprise and win the league, but then it doesn't go well for him, and then he moved to MLS and wins MLS, that counts, right? That's 3 leagues.
Could you do Club World Cup? You move to a team that wins the Club World Cup.
Now he's going to make it 4.
Then you move to the summer. You move in the summer to another team. Let's say you move to Liverpool and they win the title again. Then in January you move from Liverpool to no, you run out of transfer window. Shoot, I was trying to see if you could get to another European team and then move to an MLS team and do 4 in like 18 months. That's next level.
If you play for 4 teams in a season and you get 4 medals, you don't deserve any of them.
Or do you deserve all of them? Are you the glue that all of those teams needed? We don't know. Speaking of Liverpool, Takumi Minamino did this in 2019-2020. He won the league with Salzburg, then moved to Liverpool and won it. And Leandro Paredes was my final one. He won the Russian league with Zenit, which is difficult to track because it's difficult to track the Russian league these days. And then he moved to PSG in January, won Ligue 1 with them as well in the same season.
There we go. Very good. By the way, if Napoli do win the Scudetto, and it's looking like they will, how much of a rush are they going to be to mail that medal to Paris? I can't imagine it's going to be a priority.
He wasn't like unpopular for leaving, right, Gavardana?
I think some of the fans have not taken well to the. It doesn't sit well with them.
If they win, and for the amount of money they got for him, I wonder if he would return for the parade and festivities. He has other obligations right now at present, but if they waited, I wouldn't be surprised if he showed up, and then it would be great if he did the Ramos and dropped the trophy, and then that became a whole story. Like, oh, he leaves and he breaks the trophy? Real cool.
He ain't dropping nothing. Don't worry about that. There we go. All right, Brian, thank you very much for your question. One more quick break. When we come back, we're talking about Xabi Alonso's prospective time as Real Madrid manager and much more. Join us then. Total Soccer Show, welcome back to our listener questions episode. Eddie on the Discord has come in with this one. Xabi Alonso has been touted as the next Real Madrid manager, but is this current team built to play his style? Considering Madrid just picked up Trent and Alonso uses pacey wingbacks like Frimpong and Grimaldo, how would that work? Joe, what do we think about this one? I'm tempted with a question like this to say, does it matter if it's not built to his style? This is Madrid. Does anything matter like this?
This is Real Madrid we're talking about.
Exactly.
I mean, you're right. I think ultimately is what I would say to that. That's how Carlo Ancelotti has vibed for the last several years and how Real Madrid have won titles for the last forever. So, yeah, I think the hope is they have an absurd amount of talent. They're automatically a top 3 team in the league. You try to figure out enough of how this works so they can become a top 2, if not top 1 team, win a league title, and make a deep Champions League run. That's a pretty reliable recipe, regardless of who is in charge of Real Madrid. We do know that Xabi Alonso, if he does end up in Madrid, is going to be more structured than Carlo Ancelotti has been. And so I think this does present some really interesting on-field questions for Madrid. How much those things end up mattering to their successes? Probably not in the majority, but in the margins, yeah, I think these things absolutely do matter. And it's going to be different for Xabi Alonso at Real Madrid compared to a Bayer Leverkusen. The simplest way I think I can summarize this is that Real Madrid have players who want to be accommodated by the team's tactical approach. Leverkusen don't have those players, right? They don't have Florian Wirtz is their highest profile player, or at least their most talented player. He's happy to work within the team construct because he's not Kylian Mbappe. Like, he hasn't done the things that Kylian Mbappe has done. He's not as impressive of a player as Kylian Mbappe. He might not be Vinny Jr. either, although I do love Florian Wirtz. Those players from Madrid necessitate difficult conversations and changes to what Xabi Alonso has done. It's hard to picture exactly how Real Madrid, with those players in mind, and some of the other players in their squad that are either there or going to be there soon, it's hard to picture exactly how Real Madrid fit into the same 3-4-3 look that Xabi Alonso has used, right? To the point where I'm kind of thinking we're not going to see that 3-4-3 setup from Real Madrid. Some challenges in all of this. Trent Alexander-Arnold, we all think is going to Real Madrid. Feels like a formality at this point. Maybe I'll eat my words on there. I don't think I will. Trent Alexander-Arnold is not Frimpong whatsoever. And the question, I think Eddie mentions, Frimpong and Grimaldo as these high-flying outside backs. They're very different players. Grimaldo is much more involved, a little bit deeper down the field at times. He'll still get forward and has an absurd number of goal contributions over the last 2 years. But Frimpong is like high and wide forward. I'm actually a winger in outside backs clothing. And Grimaldo straddles that line a little bit more. Trent Alexander-Arnold is not a high and wide outside back. That's literally never been his game. I don't think there's a way in which that's the role that Alexander-Arnold is going to play for Real Madrid. So that makes me wonder, will Alexander-Arnold sort of become the Grimaldo of it all? And you have the left wing back push forward in a Frimpong kind of way instead of the right back, the actual Frimpong, doing it in the way that he does for Leverkusen. But then who is that player in the Real Madrid team? I don't know who that player is. I don't think you're getting Rodrigo to magically become a wingback or Vinny Jr. You're certainly not getting to become a wingback. That's a real question. Then you think about the back three and the center backs that are in this Real Madrid team. Do we feel great about David Alaba, like defending in large swaths of space as his outside back bombs forward?
You could have just said, do we feel great about David Alaba? And I would have said no. You don't need to add any other detail there.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of where we're at. I think David Alaba is still an excellent center back, but I don't know that at this point in his career I want him doing that job. You look further upfield, Jude Bellingham is sort of this weird kind of positionless 9.5 sort of player. Xabi Alonso hasn't used someone like that. He's used a much more traditional, in the modern sense anyway, Florian Wirtz type, which is like a half-space kind of central creator in the front line. Bellingham's not that player. Real Madrid don't have that player. They have wingers. They have a positionless striker in Kylian Mbappe. They have a positionless attacking midfielder in Jude Bellingham. They have the positionless wonder Fede Valverde. There's a lot of questions here. If people can't tell, I'm very interested in this conversation because I think it is a fascinating set of dilemmas that Xabi Alonso may or may not, if he doesn't go, have to solve. And it's not as simple as, just plop all the pieces into the 3-4-3 structure because you might get to that structure eventually, but there's going to have to be real changes and difficult conversations along the way.
Yeah, it does seem like those are all absolutely fair points, Joe, and I had similar notes where if you look at the Real Madrid squad as it is now, it's an awkward fit for Xabi Alonso. What I will say is it does seem like Real Madrid are going to have an active summer transfer window. So they're getting Trent Alexander-Arnold. I was listening to Mario Cortahana, who is the Athletics Real Madrid correspondent, on a YouTube video the other day. He had all kinds of interesting reporting on who they want. So they are in the market for a left back. They've been linked with Milos Kerkez at Bournemouth. They're in the market for at least one centre back. Their dream centre back is William Saliba. It seems like they're already giving him the Mbappe whispers about his contract, maybe running that down. That's their next target in that sense. But for this summer, Dean Huijsen is their top target, apparently. There's also recognition that they need a midfield rhythm builder. They've been linked with Martin Zubimendi, even though it seems like Arsenal are maybe leading the chase for him. Florian Wirtz, who came up in the discussion earlier, lot of transfer speculation about him at the moment. I was reading in Build earlier this week that Bayern Munich apparently are leading that pursuit. His family wants to stay in Germany, but Real Madrid have been interested in him for a number of seasons. Obviously, if Alonso's going there as well, that becomes a strong sales pitch. So I think there's a chance that squad looks quite different coming out of the summer. I was also reading just today before we started recording that apparently Jeremy Frimpong this summer has a €35 million release clause that a number of clubs, including Liverpool, are interested in activating. So I know Real Madrid have just signed Trent Alexander-Arnold, but to your point, Joe, about that being an awkward fit for him, if they're looking for a right wing-back on the relative cheap, then maybe Frimpong ends up at the Bernabeu. So there's a number of different options there for Real Madrid.
That would be wild if that happened, by the way, for them to make such a fuss over signing Alexander-Arnold just to bring in another player in his exact same position. That's like a slight to the point where I'd be absolutely shocked if that were to happen. But the thing about all this, I love those shots, Graham, and I think those moves would largely make this Real Madrid team better. The center mid feels like the lowest priority on that group, and it's not surprised that I think you named it last, basically. So I think that all fits. Real Madrid are so curious because they have now accumulated like 3 of the most interesting players in soccer. I think this is true. Trent Alexander-Arnold is a right back, but he's not a right back. He's not a great defensive player. He's not a wide player, but he's also not fully a central midfielder. He's not a rhythm builder. He is a great crosser of the ball. He thrives in the half space. He's unique, really, in how he approaches that outside back role on the right side, or how he plays centrally when he's asked to do that. Jude Bellingham really is a unique player. He's not somebody you want to just toss into a double pivot because it feels like then you lose so much of the value that he brings in the final third. And if you have him bombing forward out of that double pivot role, then you might leave yourself a bit exposed defensively. Bellingham is a strange player in that way. And Kylian Mbappe, is he a 9? Is he a winger? What does he want to do? He wants to do what he wants. All these players cause headaches, and how whoever the manager is, and I kind of hope it is Xabi Alonso because I think he's a smart guy who could make this Real Madrid team like even more fun and at least a little bit more structured than they've been. How you fit those players into a manager who also has their own ideas, I truly don't know. Like, I don't have a good answer because I think this is the kind of thing you have to work through over a preseason and over maybe multiple preseasons. But all I know is I'm going to be hanging out, eating popcorn, watching this team play because they're about to get very, very interesting.
I really enjoyed this question. I think Graham and Joe have laid it all out really well. I will say it is the first time, like, when you hear Xabi Alonso going to Real Madrid, it's like, oh yeah, former player, he won the Bundesliga, he's an amazing manager, this is a slam dunk. They're going to be the best club ever. When you really think about it, though, which is what this question requires, I see a scenario as likely a scenario of him figuring it out as it is that it implodes and that it goes really poorly. Because I think, like, Graham called it an awkward fit, Xabi Alonso and his system with Real Madrid. I don't think it is a fit. And I think it requires, maybe it is investment and they bring in a bunch of different players. But even there, to Joe's point, I don't think there's a ton of people that are necessarily going to be like, sure, I'll be a hard-working wingback who doesn't get the glory for you. Like, no, I'm a left winger and I will stay in the left wing, and also I'm a left winger and I will stay in left wing. You know what? I'm a left winger. I would also like to stay in the left wing. Like, I think he is going to have to adjust, is my guess. I think he will have to change his tactics, and maybe it's as limited as, okay, Trent Alexander-Arnold is going to get to do what he wants to do, and then I'll have somebody else be the kind of wide attacking left wingback, left fullback. But I wonder if he has to do even more work than that, and if we see him sort of, maybe this was part of the interview, maybe this is part of the process, is him kind of figuring out a whole new approach, because otherwise I don't know if this is going to work that well, at least not right away.
Yeah, the good news for Real Madrid and for Xabi Alonso is that he, going back to his days at Real Sociedad B, I was reading an interesting article about this. They played in a 4-2-3-1. They didn't play in this back three with wing backs, and so the best managers do adapt. It's the thing about Ruben Amorim that makes me nervous about him, is how he seems to have like this rigid idea of a system that he's going to use regardless of whether the players fit it or not. I don't know if Xabi Alonso is that same kind of manager. I think there's a chance he's going into that Real Madrid team and use an entirely different approach and an entirely different system to the one that we've seen over the last 2 years at Leverkusen.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point, Graham. This is a young manager. This is his first senior role space as a manager, isn't it, in Germany that he's got at the moment. So you'd think that Real Madrid will, maybe I'm expecting too much of them, but in the due diligence of the interview process that Taylor mentioned, they're going to say, okay, how are you going to apply to what the squad we have here? And I think you're quite right. There will be, I would expect Xabi Alonso to evolve and adapt with the team rather than necessarily the team adapting and evolving to what we've seen from Alonso this far. Is that fair?
Yeah, he'll have to. And even just from I think there are certain expectations of Real Madrid managers that make it difficult for system coaches to succeed there, particularly when, to the point that's already made, the players that he's inheriting are Jude Bellingham and Kylian Mbappe and Rodrigo and Vinicius. And that's kind of the riddle of Real Madrid is, Joe's absolutely right. You have all these really interesting players that are kind of difficult to figure out. But if you figure it out, these are the best players in the world. And so the figuring out is the interesting part of the process. And going on how Xabi Alonso has turned around Leverkusen, he had a lot of figuring out to do with this Leverkusen team. He took them over; they were fighting relegation, and then he takes them up into Europe. The following season, they win the title. So he's already proven. We don't have a huge sample size; it's just one senior club looking beyond Real Sociedad B. But we have a good idea that Xabi Alonso is a good problem solver. And he's going to have problems to solve at Real Madrid. I'm so looking forward to seeing how it pans out.
I just can't shake he's a good problem solver when the problems want to be solved and will help you solve them.
Yes.
When it's, hey, this doesn't fit, I need you to play here. No. I don't know how you solve that problem. I don't know, maybe I am painting unfairly or with too broad of a brush, but we saw that with Mbappe at PSG under a very firm in what he wants manager in Luis Enrique. I wonder if Xabi Alonso is going to be able to wrest control, because that is what he's basically going to be asked to do, is come in and be the manager for Real Madrid and kind of stake your claim, mold them in the way that makes sense to you. But they have been molded by their most recent manager, Carlo Ancelotti, into a team that is sort of we'll figure it out. Score some goals. It'll be fine. And I just think you can't have those individuals suddenly become, hey, we were facing relegation, so we'll do whatever we have to do to pull in the same direction. I think that's going to be his biggest battle right away. It is, truthfully, it is just less of a slam dunk than I thought it was going to be. And thinking about it, it is a conundrum. And it is also the first appointment for Real Madrid in a while that feels a little bit yeah, we'll have him. We'll take that. That's an asset we want that makes us look better. It's a former player. We bring him in. He's a handsome guy. We'll put him on the sidelines in a suit. It's a slam dunk. It's going to be awesome. Whereas there have been times with Madrid where I do think that they have thought it out a little bit more and been more okay with trying something different and trying somebody who is a system manager. And maybe it doesn't work, like with Lopetegui. But I just wonder if this is one of those times where everything looks good on paper, but when you then kind of assemble it into a team, if it's going to have some sizable hiccups along the way.
We shall see how big those hiccups are. Or maybe you won't. We'll find out. Eddie, thank you very much indeed for your question. This is the Ed block, by the way. We've got one more Ed for a question here from Ed de Horatius, who says, lacrosse and ice hockey allow play behind the net. Would such a shift help or hurt scoring in soccer? And how would corner kicks work? How would tactics have to change to adapt to this new wrinkle? Now, Graham, let's look past the why should we bother do this and assume that we are doing this. It's an interesting idea. It's an interesting thought exercise. Offsides, I imagine, would be a bit different here. But do you think it would help or hinder in terms of goal creation in the sport if we could, move the touchline back a few yards behind the goal and you could, play behind the goal a little bit?
I have so many questions about this, largely because I have my only exposure to lacrosse is the lacrosse scenes in American Pie, and ice hockey is not
with actors who have clearly never played lacrosse before. In that scene.
Exactly.
Yeah,
they're so good at lacrosse in that film. But so I've got so many questions. So I know how I've watched ice hockey. I know you don't get elevation on the puck, or not very often, right? Lacrosse, could you play a cross or like a lofted ball? I don't know what it's called in lacrosse, or like a chipped ball into the area from behind the goal. So you could stand behind the goal and go, right, you head it in, or if you're chipping it, you head it in. Is that possible?
Graham, you're already sort of in that question showcasing why this wouldn't work. It's a really interesting idea, but I think to answer your question, the goalkeeper has the big giant wide stick so that they can, and I think they're goaltenders in hockey. I forget what they are in lacrosse, but the goalkeeper will turn entirely around. So if you, Graham, have run behind the goal with the ball, the goalkeeper will follow you and sort of be ready. And if you try that pass, he can intercept it because he's taller than the goal or as tall as the goal. Soccer's goal is much, much bigger and much, much wider. And that is the major obstacle I see is you could just have chipped balls over the top, and keepers can try to claim that and try to catch it, but it is much less easy to do when you're worrying about everybody else in the box and when you don't have a giant netted stick to help you do it. Now, maybe that's the solution. You add that to the goalkeeper's repertoire. But I that's what I kept running up against is in hockey, it's a little goal. You can kind of go around really quickly and try to score on the other side, but defenders can follow you really quickly. In soccer, it's 8 yards wide. You've got to find a way to get around that. I think it would be insane, and I think would lead to more goals, largely because I think it would be much harder to have any semblance of organized defense if you could just have people go behind the goal and keep the ball. You can't really have your set positions anymore because somebody's got to get back there to try to apply some pressure. So I think it would lead to more goals, but not in a good way, in a chaos leads to goals sort of way.
Well, would it lead to more goals? Because I'm just thinking, in soccer, that space behind the goal is just completely dead space, right? Why would you ever use... You're not constructing an attack more coherently using that space. Is it just purely
You definitely can, because you can go behind it and stand there and wait for players to do. If no one's tracked you closely enough, then you can just put your foot on the ball and wait for everybody to get in a position where you can then pass it to one side or the other or lift it over in soccer's case.
But you can't score a goal from behind the goal. So what's the incentive to go behind the goal if you're a defender?
Blanco can. There you go. Because isn't that... I guess I would respond to that by saying, you can't. I guess you theoretically could score a goal from across from 40 yards out, but you still defend that, right? You would still need to apply pressure because otherwise they are going to pick out a pass and find somebody running on to smash into the back of the net.
It just feels
or they're going to chip it over the top.
It just feels like if you're doing it from behind the goal, there's not as much of a dangerous angle as if it's someone doing it from out wide. So it's just if I would just wait on the person chipping it straight into the area so that you wouldn't because they can't shoot into the goal from behind the goal. It's possible I'm not understanding lacrosse here.
When they take a touch wide of the goal and then drill a pass into the 6-yard box from behind the goal, you don't see that creating chaos and goal scoring opportunities because that's what I see if you're not applying pressure.
It'd be like a corner kick.
The Pep Guardiola goal, Graham. The Pep Guardiola cut back to the line goal. If you've got an extra yard to do that in, is that more chaotic? Maybe it is.
I don't know. Such an alien concept to me, this.
Now, what I think we should allow is checking in that area. That should be allowed. You should be able to physically assault the player, and then we embrace some hockey and some lacrosse.
What I think, Taylor, is the area behind the goal is covered in a layer of Nickelodeon gunge, and the ball slows down.
I meant
there
no.
as well, just to add an extra wrinkle. Yeah.
Nickelodeon gunge?
Yeah,
like slime?
It's what you were drinking earlier, Taylor.
I think gunge might be a British thing, right?
Oh, is that okay? Sorry, slime, green slime from Nickelodeon show from the '90s, Guts. That's what I'm thinking of.
I'm into it. I mean, if we're gonna do this, I think we should also add the NBA Jam style. If you shoot from here in this time window, you get 3 goals instead of 1 goal. I think you got to do everything. Yes, and we should light the ball on fire as well.
I think Taylor's got to be at least a little right here, and that more space means probably easier for the attacking team. Ryan was right, which is that the offside rule would have to be completely rewritten in this whole context. Otherwise, that space is utterly useless because the defenders would have no reason to go behind the goal for any reason. So that's the real headline here.
Once you're in
the
that
least
space,
sexy headline of them all.
Once you're in that space, no one can be offside. Is how it would have to work, I think.
Yeah, and hockey's offside rule is different, right? I think it's more zone based than it is last defender. I'm not. I don't have the expertise here.
Keep Lautaro Martinez next to the post for the whole game and just have him step back onside whenever he needs.
That's the Luis Suarez special right there, folks.
You have to carry it over. That's how it works. You, the player, if you dribble into that zone, then anyone can go in there. But you can't pass it into that zone. Let's make it even more complicated.
I think Taylor is right in that more space opens up more opportunity for the attacking team. I also think Graham is kind of right in that it is relatively useless space. You would have to move not just a little wide of the goal. You would have to move several feet to either side of the goal in order to play that cutback. And even then, your angle is still pretty trash. So
it's just
I don't know.
It's just more stuff you have to pay attention to.
Yeah, for sure. I agree.
You're a goalie facing literally a direction you have never had to face before in a soccer game, and now you're worrying about everything developing around you. Same thing for defenders. You're just going to lose track of marks. And especially if you have 2 people who now have to go try to close down on either side of the goal or whatever.
Wing mirrors. like a hat.
Now we're just yelling at
Like
nonsense.
Petr Cech hat with wing
Wait,
mirrors.
what
on
was the
either
first
side.
word you said, Graham? Wing mirrors?
Wing mirrors.
Like
Or-
Maras.
Wing mirrors. Am I saying that wrong? Wing
What
mirrors?
is that?
You got it. You're
They-
saying it
they-
with that ridiculous Scottish accent. That's all.
They come with gunge. Don't you
They
know?
come with
Oh,
guns. yeah.
Gunge. Yeah, absolutely. Totally there.
Rearview mirrors, is that what we call them? I don't know. I'm losing. I don't speak
Ah,
American very
okay,
well, apparently.
gotcha.
No,
No,
that's
I got
the one
you. Okay.
above. That's the one above. The
So what's the ones on the sides called?
They're wing mirrors.
Side view mirrors.
Side view
Side view
mirrors.
Yeah.
Of course they are.
Corner kicks. I don't think we've talked about corner kicks yet. I'm not sure it would change a lot on corner kicks, actually.
Where's the corner now?
The quickest route
Yeah,
to
corner-
goal would still be across into the area.
Unless, hold on, you use the gunge to pick up speed. And you roll the ball across the floor to Gunge Man, who's the guy positioned behind the goal. And then he chips it over the top to a flying Robert Van Persie who's back from retirement, and he heads it in, and all of a sudden the game has changed.
I can't wait
Solved
for
it.
Arsenal's Gungeman coach on the sidelines.
Oh, it's awesome.
Right.
That's
okay,
awesome.
FIFA. Let's make this happen. Thank you very much, Ed Horatius, for your suggestion there. If you'd like to chat about that and anything else, you can join our Discord, patreon.com/Total Soccer Show. You can also submit listener questions there. That is the conclusion of this listener questions episode. Taylor Rockwell, thank you very much. I hope you had a wonderful time. I did.
I did, and that last question was one that I didn't really think I had much to offer, and ended up being there would be more goals. I don't know how that happened, but it happened.
I like it when those kind of ones get slightly heated. Very good indeed.
Yeah,
Graham
me
Ruthven.
too. When you mean when Graham and Joe are wrong? Yeah, I like those too.
I just want.
Wait, no, Joe agreed. Joe's fine.
Yeah, I was kind of sitting on the fence, if we're being honest.
Okay,
but-
we're still going. Graham Ruthven, thank you very much.
Thank you, Ryan Bailey.
Joe Larry, thank you very much.
Gunge!
And listener, we've learned a new word. We hope you have too, listener. Thank you very much for joining us this week. You have yourselves a wonderful weekend. We'll be back on the feed very shortly. But for now, bye.